gentleman and lady, I think that there is one identified female that listens to our podcast according to the podcast statistics. Hopefully there's more than that because there are a big group that is non-specified. But welcome all. We welcome you to another episode of Chairmen of the Boards. And this time we're going to be talking about MIDI, which is something that we haven't spoken of in probably over a year's worth of episodes, I would say. And this is something that is, again, coming from our Facebook page. If you're not familiar with the Chairman of the Boards Facebook page, it is a free group with which you can join. We're almost closing in on 1,000 members. And this is a place where you can communicate with like-minded pedalboard enthusiasts and gear folks and ask your questions about what's wrong with your rig, what pedals you should get, strategies and techniques. And these are all people that are steeped in the methodology that many of us have been talking about for years in YouTube videos and Instagram, etc. So it is a wonderful ecosystem for us all to collaborate. And Brian, Grant, and I are often there answering questions as well. So we welcome you to join. But one thing that people were asking about was to do sort of a refresh on MIDI, its uses, its benefits, when you might want to incorporate this into your pedal board versus not. And luckily, we have two of the foremost rig builders in the world here between Brian and Grant to help us go through the process of MIDI. Now, I am not personally a MIDI enthusiast. I have some switcher pedal boards and I use MIDI sparingly. I wouldn't say exhaustively. I still prefer in most cases devices that are sort of individually oriented to do the thing that they do. I think usually MIDI for me comes into effect, no pun intended, with things like delays and reverbs, but don't typically use it for any other application other than that. Certainly pedals have become more and more adapted to using MIDI, whether that's, digitally controlled analog and using MIDI to do that, or just straight ahead digital pedals that have, full MIDI capability of every parameter and control. I guess maybe where we should start on this is asking the question of who do you think is the person in your mind that most benefits from incorporating some sort of MIDI control on their pedal board, whether that's switching program changes, patch changes, or maybe using a full-blown MIDI switcher. Who do you think are the people that benefit most by incorporating MIDI into their rig? Brian or Grant, who would like to start?
I can go ahead first. Unless you want to, Grant. You good?
Do it.
Okay. I would say, I feel like I'm hunching over with this mic down there. I would say the most that benefit from it, from my personal opinion, I think it's people that are maybe that are on tour, that are doing a lot of the same types of songs, or they're doing like a set list, a plethora, would you say, a Olive Garden bowl of salad and breadsticks of songs that they're going to do consistently for a period of time. That's like, man, remind me his name. He's super awesome. You did a rig rundown with him. Justin plays a Pink.
Ostrander?
Justin Ostrander?
Justin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Justin.
Yeah. So like someone like Justin, where he's going out and he's playing all these different, all these shows, but he has all of, his presets built up. I have a MIDI controller with an Axe Effects, but I have a catalog of probably 30 songs we kind of cycle through, and it helps me from a standpoint because I'm also doing like music directing. So I think it really kind of depends. Like if you're a person that is a go with the flow, I don't think a MIDI controller sometimes is going to be your thing because you like to step on stuff in the moment. Like I get that all the time. What if I just feel like doing this? Okay, well you can, depending on which switcher you have. So I lean more towards people that are doing more like they have a certain set of songs, they're going on tour, or they're playing these songs and they want, they want to save a little time, and they just don't want a lot of tap dancing. So I think it just really depends. If you're very old school, don't want to mess with the computer, don't want to worry about programming, I just want to tap it in, I definitely don't think it's for you. The Happy Gilmore method is they just tap it in. I'm just saying.
I like that. You covered in one little kind of section there, Olive Garden, salad and breadsticks.
I really did.
Happy Gilmore. You're hitting all of it, man. This is great. I think it comes down to repetition. And if you're doing a repetitive, and this is more than just songs, in my opinion, if you're doing a repetitive amount of songs or sounds, MIDI can be very helpful. So, and this is most guitar players, let's be honest, we buy pedals that can do 200 presets and we use 3. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you can cycle through everything this pedal is capable of. Take a timeline as an example. It can do so much. And you find the 3 to 5 sounds you typically use the most, and you cycle through those for different songs and sections, maybe with some different mix levels, depending on the song. And that's typically what most guitar players do. If that's the case, and you're using repetitive sounds and combinations of sounds, MIDI can be very helpful. And the biggest request I get is I want to hit one button and I want everything to change on my pedal board. Not in my life. On my pedal board, I want everything to change across the board. And so what you can do then is you can, if you want to go, I think, to its extreme, you can hit one button and a new song, a new tempo, loops in your switcher turn on and off in a combination that you've set. You can program a sound for an intro, a verse, a chorus, a bridge, a chorus 2, a bridge 2 in your MIDI controller, and you will only have to hit that many buttons for the amount of sections that you have. But then I think the next question is, well, I like that, but I also need flexibility. And that's where you can program things in to give you more flexibility, but not the flexibility that you would have if you were just having the pedals in front of you, turning knobs and all this on the fly. I don't know if you can get there. At least I'm not skilled enough in programming to do that. But you can program in things like global tap tempo or tap tempo override, so you can change the tempo at any point. You can program in a page, especially on RJM type stuff. You can program in a page of your favorite timeline settings, and you can cycle through those really quickly, and you can change those on the fly. Like, you can do things to make MIDI more flexible, but at the end of the day, it is geared towards touring musicians who have a repetitive set list. And I'll say one last thing, and then I'll hand it back to you, Mason. One of my favorite moments using MIDI was when I used to play for in a church type setting. We would do Christmas every year. And of course, you only play Christmas songs at Christmas. And I had programmed in a bunch of Christmas songs, played them. I would give myself a 7 out of 10 at best, maybe a 6. I wasn't as good as I should have been here. But my MIDI programming, spot on.
Was 10 out of 10.
And then 10 out of 10 on the MIDI programming, to the point where next year, I totally forgot about these songs. Even Christmas in July, didn't think about them. Comes back to December the following year, and I bring up my old MIDI program file, and all the songs are there. I drag and drop them, make sure my pedals are lined up. It took me 5 minutes, whereas the year before, it probably took a couple hours of programming. And so I was ready to go. Like, it saved me 2 hours. So every time I want to play one of those songs, for the most part, and again, changing pedals could throw a bit of a wrench in this, but the tempo's there, the key was there, the loops for my overdrives were there, like everything was set and programmed. And so I just relearned the songs and got on with it, and I was done. And so that was a huge benefit for me as far as MIDI programming, because everything was saved and I didn't have to think about it. I just was able to get to playing.
Amen.
I agree that it's that the person that is playing live, I think, benefits much more than the person that is in the studio.
Yep.
And I think that mostly proves itself out in terms of the session player rigs that you see. Of course, there are some exceptions where you will see a session player that has a MIDI switcher or a programmable switcher with MIDI. But for the most part, if you look at most of the guys that are out there doing the thing, whether it's Tim Pierce, whether it's Tom Bukovac, these guys are all using pedals in series for the most part. And that's kind of the thing. And when you ask a guy like Bukovac why, it's kind of the same things that we've been talking about. He said, the types of sounds that are being asked for are too different for me to be able to use presets effectively where it's a time savings. Because song 1, they want a bizarre sound. Song 2, they want a different sound. I think Tom Bukovac even said in one of his live streams that the reason why he puts an H9 on his pedal board is he just takes his iPad and he hands it to the producer and he just says, if you want something weird, you can go and find it in here and it'll beam it to the pedal and I'll play it, and so I think that's kind of like, the extent to which he experiments with it. But I think you also see guys like Derek Wells, for example. I think he has a G3. And he's certainly a very in-demand session musician in Nashville. But my understanding in speaking to him is that he's using it more like a true bypass loop. Because a lot of guys for a long time would use a strip of true bypass switches and then would just use it as a way to clean up the signal path. And maybe he's using it to control some program changes or has some sort of bank where he's got all these different changes. He's just doing changes to delays and reverbs. I don't know. I'm speculating there. But I think for the most part, you're not seeing that. I think one counter argument, though, to it is if you look back in the 80s, a lot of guys that had those Bradshaw racks were using programmable stuff in order to facilitate changes with their rack gear that had MIDI control. One thing, though, I would say about that, though, is a lot of those guys in the 80s, like Lukather and, Dan Huff, etc., a lot of the gear they used didn't have MIDI. When you're thinking about, the tri-stereo chorus or the Dimension D or a lot of these different devices that they used were basically just like pedals, but they were in rack formats. So they would just be bringing them in and bringing them out. And the switchers could obviously change combinations of things that were on and off, but it wasn't doing a whole lot of MIDI. Yeah. It was kind of in essence back to like a rack version of a true bypass strip, but it was just sort of what was appropriate for the type of gear that they were using back then.
Yeah.
But for the ones that did use MIDI, or when they got into the 90s and did have more MIDI, I would argue that back then producers were hiring session players because of the sound that they had. So it was potentially more practical to use MIDI programmability because you had sort of like your sound and they were hiring you not to sound like anybody, right? Like, or to be a chameleon. Like I think most of the session musicians now are asked to be. Maybe they have some personality in their playing, but I think a lot of times producers kind of want like an everyman. They don't want it to be too typecast. But I think in the 80s, when somebody hired Michael Landau, they wanted him to sound like Michael Landau. When somebody hired Dan Huff, they wanted the sound that those guys had sort of become emblematic of, or Paul Jackson Jr. or Michael Thompson. They were expecting that they were bringing the harmonizer, or whatever it was. And so they may have actually benefited more from having more programmability because they were asking them for the sound that they used on these hit records. And I don't know if it's as much that way anymore, even though all these guys are playing on hit records. I think that they're asking them to be different things every single day,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that was like, I was watching the Keith Scott video that you did with him and like his little around town board. I'm not sure if he does any studio work, but like, that little board, like that was like, just like hit what he was comfortable with. I had a client who went to Nashville a couple of weeks ago and, they had all the session guys hired to come in and play and stuff. And he's like, man, he's like sending me photos. He's like, man, you wouldn't believe these guys' setups. And I was like, what? And he goes, none of them have MIDI. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, this one guy has like some full tone pedals and some, an Ibanez pedal. And then he has an M9. And And I was like, oh, wow. And he goes, yeah, the M9 just has all these different modulations and wet effects and delays and stuff. And like, he's not using anything else. And I was like, well, that makes sense because those types of pedals, one, that they're comfortable with, two, they can easily get dialed down a tone. They don't have to scroll through parameters and not scrolling through excess MIDI stuff or trying to go to another page to go to a PC message. So I was like, it makes perfect sense. And like the fun thing, I think what's fun about MIDI, and I learned this when I just built a dual quad cortex rack for a band, is like I got to learn with MIDI changes how Ableton can control MIDI changes to like your units. Like if you're in a band that you're running around the stage and you don't want to be tied to your board and you have a wireless and stuff, like if you're running tracks and stuff, like the tracks can send changes to your controller. So depending on your pedals, it can send changes to your controller. If you have an RJM, like I have this rack right here I'm building, it's a fractal and it has an RJM Mag X, but he also has a GT controller. So we're running bi-directional MIDI down one 7-pin cable to do tune from the Mag to the GT to do tuner. So like bi-directional is you have the send the in and out and power down this one 7-pin cable, and that is sending the tuner from the Mag X. It's doing send and return so that the units are talking, and it's also talking to the axe effects. So like there's a lot of pluses to MIDI, because if you're like, man, I'm not interested in having a big elaborate switcher. I've heard a lot of guys that do the G3 and they do use them as an on and off and stuff like that. So like it's a very there's a practical way and there's a very complicated way. You can go really complicated easily by sending Ableton MIDI BPM to sync up your delay, devices or whatever you want for your time-based effects. Like it can do a lot of really cool stuff. But before I continue, I do want to throw it to you, Mason, to talk about some of our sponsors that make the podcast possible.
Thank you, Brian. The first sponsor that makes this podcast possible are our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary. Now, some of the MIDI programmable devices that you might consider putting on your pedal board, or maybe even some of the actual hardware that is doing the switching, is available from our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary. And not only do they have experts in the world of pedals, amplifiers, and guitars, they also have superior service. Whether you come in store or you peruse online, head to theguitarsanctuary.com. Tell them the chairman sent you. Also, our friends over at Neural DSP, not only do they have amazing hardware products such as the Quad Cortex or the miniature Quad Cortex, they also have incredible plugins, and one of which we're using right now at this very moment as you're hearing my voice. You are hearing the Mantra plugin. Let me say that again. You are hearing the Mantra plugin. This is their very first vocal plugin that they have ever done, and boy does it sound amazing. And even though we're using it right now, we have in secret been using this for several months on all of our podcasts, and boy does it make our voices sound so much better. It can do real-time de-essing, all sorts of effects processing. It can do all sorts of EQing, everything that you would want as it relates to being a vocalist or even a podcaster and having high quality vocal audio. This is a great plugin for you. And Neural DSP is offering our listeners a very special discount of 30% off every plugin in their store that is 90 days or older. So the Mantra is not quite yet available, but in short time will be available as part of that. So you get 30% off using the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. Use that at the discount code at checkout and get 30% off. That's 70% away from free, folks. So do check them out. Next, our friends over at Bestronix. Bestronix Brad is one of the best people that you'll come into contact with in this industry. And if you need anything that's related to pedal boards, if you need anything that's related to cables, he is your guy, whether it's plugs, whether it's jacks, whether it's whatever it is that you can think of. He's got a part number for you, and he can help you out and get 10% off your entire order using the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS. Get 10% off. And again, tell him the chairman sent you. Also, new sponsor alert. We have just got a brand new sponsor, our friends over at TrueFire, the premier place for online lessons. They have over 2 million guitarists that are using this product. They have over 85,000 videos with lessons, slow-mo looping, sync tabs, backing tracks, all that stuff. And their instructors. Can you believe this lineup of instructors? Steve Vai, Eric Johnson, Guthrie Trapp, Robin Ford, Larry Carlton. These guys are your teachers. They are showing you their methods, their strategies on how they got to where they were or where they are, and how you can incorporate that into your very own playing. I'm a huge fan of the Robin Ford one. I've owned several of those, and I've used the backing tracks to create some various things that we've done in some of our YouTube videos. The Larry Carlton one, also amazing. My buddy Jeff Mackerlane has some amazing classes on blues. I love watching them. I love learning from them. They're really, really useful tools. And our listeners get a very special opportunity. If you head over to truefire.com/chairman, you get a 14-day free trial, all access. Every single lesson by every single artist is available for you to check out, to see if you like it. No strings attached. So go over there, check it out. I think you're going to be impressed. Again, even somebody like me, who's an amateur guitar player, there's always something that you can learn. There's always a teacher that is just perfect for you. And they have so many different options there that really help you kind of hone your craft and just get a little bit better. I always find I come away from them a lesson, taking the time to sit down and learn from a new teacher. There's always something that I take away or helps me think about the fretboard in a different way than maybe I had before. So I highly recommend you check it out. They offer a great product. Again, truefire.com/chairman. Go over and check it out. By supporting our sponsors, you are in turn supporting us. Now back to MIDI.
Yeah. So I would say, back to the point, I think there's a lot of different ways in which MIDI can be used. Sending MIDI to something, receiving MIDI from something, a bidirectional, controlling multiple units all at the same time. So I think it comes down to such an application of what you're trying to do. But even just testing MIDI and stuff, it can get really confusing. If you're building your own MIDI cables and stuff, there's a lot of testing one after another and that kind of stuff to do, just because this, if one pin, is wrong or a lug is broken, things won't communicate. And especially these pedals, they need to see all the communication. I mean, even MIDI clock controlling devices and stuff, there's just a lot of different stuff that's out there for MIDI. So yeah, that was the finishing of my thought.
If you were going to tell somebody who wants to dip their toe into MIDI, but maybe doesn't want to go full controller, like a switcher with MIDI control on it, what are some of the products that you would tell people to get into? Let's say, for example, that you wanted to run a serial path of pedals that it was, let's say, in stereo into the front of 2 amps. And let's just say you want to have something where you could just do reverb and delay, kind of changes per song. What would be a product that you would say is easy barrier for entry, super easy to program, you can kind of get on your feet and start to experiment with MIDI, and that is going to offer you some of those capabilities to kind of see if that's something that you would want to go further with and maybe upgrade to a switcher at some point in the future that incorporates all that with, various programmable loops. What would you say is kind of a good starting place for people that want to start experimenting with MIDI?
I think a lot of people have a MIDI controller on their board and they don't even realize it. And this is where something again, a Timeline, a Meris LVX, these have MIDI control capabilities built into them. And that's where if you don't have to go from I'm not using MIDI at all to everything is connected. You don't have to make that huge jump. You could go from something as simple as I have my 5 delay sounds programmed in my LVX, my Meris LVX, which is a kind of a multi-delay effect. And you could connect a 5-pin cable out of that to a Meris Mercury X or a Big Sky. And you could basically just say, when this delay preset hits, send out PC message number 1, and that'll send out to the reverb, and you can sync up these devices just by changing presets on your LVX, and you can sync up multiple devices just like that. That's probably a little bit clunkier, but if you don't want to have to buy anything other than a MIDI cable, you could get into it that way and just see like, okay, how much effort is it to program PCs? Do I understand PC messages and all this? That would be the absolute basics, but maybe not the most efficient. After that, I would probably recommend if you had the budget to buy a controller and you wanted to get dip your toes, Pirate MIDI Bridge 6, Morningstar MC6. The apps are so easy to use. You plug them into your computer and they automatically connect. And if I can connect it without issue, it's easy. And both of these companies have made this quite easy to do. And I would honestly, the very first thing I would do is I would learn how to send a PC message, which is basically I want to go from the preset 1 I created on my delay, and I want to hit a button on the MIDI controller, and I want it to go to preset 2. And I would just learn how to do that. And once you can do that, then you can start building on that knowledge. And that's probably the biggest barrier to MIDI programming, is just connecting up your pedals with a cable and sending that first change and seeing that change happen on the pedal. Once you can do that, then you're off to the races. You're creating preset names, you're naming songs, and you're creating sections and all that. So I would probably start with either Pirate MIDI or Morningstar, and I would get either their 4-button, Pirate has a 4-button, a Bridge 4, or the 6-button. And I think Morningstar has their 3-button and a 6-button. I would start with that, and I would basically try and program a PC message or a program change and go from there. And then you can add in more pedals and you can add in, more complexity if you like it. But Brian, what would you, let's frame this question a bit differently, Brian. What would you disagree with what I just said? Let's make things a little spicy here. Where am I wrong, or how would you improve on what I just said?
No, remind me, what did you say for the first option?
Using your existing timeline, LVX, your existing pedals that are MIDI capable to send a PC message to another device if you don't have the budget to buy a controller.
Got it. Yeah, no, I don't really have any like disagreements or anything like that. I think that first one is a really good budget friendly option. It only gets tedious in the fact that if you're scrolling through, say, timeline A, B, and for banks, and you're going between those, yes, it'll control the other ones, but you'll have to, if you're going to go between A and B for multiple banks, you're just going to have to copy like the reverb to make sure it matches up. So like, there's little things you'll have to match up where like me, man, for the price of it, especially now, like the disaster era designs, the DMC that they have, like they have the DMC, they have a micro, they have a mini baby, they have a 3, they have a 4, they have all these different sizes. And this was the first company that I really used going in the MIDI. I went into using it because Jeffrey Cundy did a setup with you guys, and it was like the DMC8 and the DPC8, and it was this big old setup, and it was really cool. I just got the little 3-button one with a screen on it, and it gave me devices A, B, C, and D and some numbers, and that's all I could use to do some programs. And that for me was really easy because device A could be PC number 3, but device B could be PC number 7. So like they could be different numbers, and you're not having to worry about making sure they're all on the same MIDI channel, making sure like there's little things you have to do to make sure they're good. But for like I would say most budget, especially go like Reverb or Facebook, that kind of stuff, you can get these DPC 3s micros really, really cheap. You can get it sometimes for $100 or less. Like I know that the newer versions, their version 4 stuff, can do all sorts of crazy, MIDI out through 1/4 inch or red remote. If you're not worried about that, just go get a really bare bones. Sometimes you can get the ones without the screen, and they're like $50. Like they're not very expensive. So I would say that would be my first route. Another route, yes, I would say the Pirate MIDI stuff. I have the Bridge 4, which they dubbed it the Honey Badger for me. they wrote Honey Badger on the bottom of it, which was fun from our podcast with them. The MC6, I've never used the MC3 from
which is the one that had the Morningstar one that has like the really the very like the very
colorful screen,
colorful graphics. Yeah,
that's the Pro.
That's the Pro. Yes,
because that would seem so. I don't know how easy it is to program, but just from like a visual standpoint, it just looks like it would be so easy to like make it really clear what you're stepping on. Because like some of the ones that don't have the digital display or just have just like a strict numerical, single, like little like a miniature little screen. You don't know where you are, like, or it can be difficult to know where you are. Whereas you could like see really easily, like, okay, bridge. Chorus, middle eight,
the color of it, everything, no. I have it's in this case over here, right there. But I'm not gonna pull it out. It's an MC8 Pro. It's their newest. It's the 8 Pro version, and the screen is just like that. It's beautiful. I've literally told Ron. I was like, Ron, RJM. I was like, this is a screen you need to look at if you guys ever do updates because it's incredible. So like those are really great options. I think I wouldn't pick those as a first steps. I would pick.
Are they complicated to do?
They're not complicated. You just have to know that when you connect it, anything that you want to do, you have to go program it. So you have to set the switch. Is it a push? Is it a push or is it a press? Is it a double tap? And then you have to go select the command. Is it a MIDI PC? Is it a CC? Is it a note? Is it a bank? And then you have to select the channel number, the value, plus and minus value. There's the position. There's a lot more involved, which I think if you
can get in trouble.
You can get in trouble. You can just get too far into it where I think there are stuff out there. You have to go in with an understanding. I think if you have no idea, and also just read the manual. That's a big thing. Everyone like nowadays doesn't want to read the manual, but the manual just helps so much. It's just
what's the most foolproof one? What's the most foolproof one to start with?
Man, I would say, Pirate MIDI and Morningstar are very similar. They both have catalogs. To be as blunt as possible, I think the most foolproof for me is the RJM LT. I have this LT.
Is that still made?
It's not made, and they might make them too. They're not very. There's only MIDI in and out and function jacks. I use this. I keep this on my wall for testing MIDI stuff. Personally, I think it makes more sense because so much of the programming is already in there, like the loops and stuff. Like you plug it in and you kind of already can see. Oh, okay, I can make that a preset message, or I can go and build a preset. That's where the difference is in the Pirate MIDI and the Morningstar is to like an RJM PBC is that like you can do a lot of the onboard preset building and combine these loops together on the unit, where those you have to go for that single button and select every single command that you want to do for that one press. So I think it's a great option. I just think it really depends your experience level, how much you want to go into diving into it without getting in trouble, as well as just your time. And like if you're one of those like I need to be able to at any point turn that loop off, I wouldn't suggest them being the right option. But if we're solely thinking MIDI controller just to change a couple devices, I still think the disaster stuff is really easy. Like really easy. You can get the Wallace MIDI clock or the Sailor Quartz. Those you can send out PC messages to control stuff, but then that starts going into tempo and stuff. So I guess it just really depends. But yeah, I would say disaster area for me is like it's a basic one. Basic but really good.
Awesome.
What do you got? It looks like you're about to say something, Grant.
No, it's interesting hearing you say that.
What? Let's fight.
Because I haven't had as much experience with disaster area in the last few years. I'll say that. But I always found them a little tricky. I always found not having screens on the older models, having the limited feature set, because you really can't do much. I found it more difficult Whereas I think the reason being is and this is my problem, is I'm so used to seeing an app now, like on my computer screen, that I know it's like, okay, I've set my MIDI channels correctly. I can see that I've programmed it. Whereas on the disaster area, it's more like trusting some of the stuff that you can't see as easily, or you got to relate it back to a manual. It's like, oh, number 2 means that you selected this. And like, okay, well, I got to double check everything. And so that's where I really like the app. But hearing you talk, I'm like, yeah, I guess there is a lot more to the Morningstar app. And I just know to ignore most of it. Like because I've done it so much now, it's hard for me to view it in the eyes of a beginner. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think, I struggle a bit with the disaster stuff. I really like a clean app. But I would say this. I would say that if you're going to get into MIDI, even the basics, expect a learning curve. Like, you expect to not get it 100%. In the first hour. And I would say, if you want to do this, get a basic MIDI controller, and maybe disaster is the one to do. And you would be able to figure out disaster in the first, hour or two, no problem. But give yourself more time than you think you need. So it's like, I got my MIDI controller in the mail. I have the next 2 hours blocked out. And my goal at the end of 2 hours is to see a pedal respond to MIDI. And in reality, you might get it done in 20 minutes. But just be ready to, fight with it a little bit. And once you get that first one done and programmed, it really is like, now the snowball is rolling down the hill and you're just gaining momentum. But I think that's the trickiest part. So, and you can also, one thing you can do, if you do want to get into MIDI and you decide to go the Pirate or the Morningstar route or the RJM LT route, and you have the app up, send your screenshot of your settings into the Chairman group on Facebook, and we can have a quick scan. Like, oh, you forgot to program your MIDI channel. Like, just change that to a 2. And it should work. If it doesn't, let us know and we'll chat to you about it. And so I think that's where having a community of people that have been there, like, oh yeah, I remember when I had to program my first MIDI pedal and I didn't know what MIDI channels were and I didn't set them correctly, or I didn't line them up from my controller to the MIDI pedal being controlled. We've all been there. And once you have been there, diagnosing it is generally very quick. So yeah, join us on the Facebook group if you do get stuck. But if you're feeling like we're describing your style of playing, I play similar songs week in, week out, or even annually, I cycle back to a similar song list. And I like saved sounds and accessing them quickly without tap dancing. I need my head up because I sing or I music direct, so I can't be down on my pedal board. Pre-saved tempos, we play to a click. All that stuff is indicators of MIDI might help you out. Then ask us some questions before you make a purchase in the group, in the Facebook group, and we'll see if we can help you out, or people in the group will help you out. And I think, you might be able to save a little bit of that pain or the suffering of having to do it totally on your own and not really being sure if you're buying the right controller or if you're even the right person for MIDI.
Yeah. You also just make sure that the MIDI controller that you buy will actually do the stuff that you want to do. I think there's a lot of stuff that you could get on Amazon really cheap. And then you find out that it's like a page turner for your iPad or something like that. Like that kind of stuff, like it's not going to work for your board, because like a lot of that stuff can be programmed via Bluetooth to like trigger Ableton tracks, start sessions. Like there's a lot of stuff like that that's really cool. But if you see that it can do Bluetooth, there's a really good chance that you cannot control it from your board. Like there might be sometimes where you can, but yeah, it's very much doing the research. That's another fun thing about MIDI, is that kind of stuff can control your whole setup, and it can control triggering tracks and stuff. So, and muting stuff or unmuting. So yeah, I think there's good ways to utilize it as well as testing it. I always say when you're testing MIDI, especially make sure that all your MIDI throughs are on or merges on. Make sure you have a MIDI out set up. Make sure they're not all on the same MIDI channel. And then I typically individually check the cables to make sure you have like the proper pin configuration per pedal. If you build all the cables, plug them all in, and try to test it, and you have you have an issue, you don't know where to start. So just kind of make sure that stuff is set up properly, and then from there, MIDI is like a honey badger. It doesn't care until it gets its MIDI command it needs. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I think that that's a great note to end on, Brian. I appreciate everybody being here today and having this conversation about MIDI. Of course, if you want to continue the dialogue, we can do that in the Chairmen of the Boards Facebook group. You can also do it in the comments section. This is stuff that we ordinarily go over, we review, we respond to. So please don't be bashful. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple or wherever it is that you get your podcasts, you can engage with us over on Facebook. It's an easy way to put questions in, stuff that we see, the rest of the community sees. And most of these people, again, are steeped in this information. They know the things that we've said as far as troubleshooting strategies and techniques. And often they get to these questions sooner than we do and have the exact same verbatim response that we would give because they've seen so many of these. So we welcome you to join us there. And we thank you so much for the opportunity to be in front of you and speak with you every single week. And with that said, we will see you on the next one. And I think that wraps up our dialogue about whether you need MIDI or not, and whether one of these products might be a good candidate for you. Thank you again to our sponsors, and see you guys next time.